So hello everyone, I am Suraj. I'm a visual artist. I create pictures, and right now I am pursuing masters in animation design from IIT Bombay. So usually I post videos about CEED and NID, and this video is also regarding the same thing. It's very long since I posted my videos, and it happened to be a good thing for me because a lot of DMs came to me of different topics, and one of such topic was the discussion on the approach towards these two design exams in ID and CDAT. I happen to be having a little bit authority to talk on it because I gave both the exams, I cracked both the exams. My general ranking in NID CDAT this year was 18 in animation design discipline. So we'll discuss differences and the approach for these two exams in this particular video. And I'm a visual artist and I'm going to teach you maths. See, this is the reason I did not wanted to do this, because part A for both the exams are comparatively very easy, relatively very easy as compared to the part B, because both the exams tend to be very lengthy, and the amount of marks, the weightage of part B for both of the exams are much higher, and the major chunk of your marks, your rank, is going to come from that. All you need to do to part A is to just crack it. I mean, for CEED this year the cutoff was 24 for general category. So, and the highest cutoff was, I guess, in 2019, which was 36. So relatively, I mean, I'm not telling you that part A of any entrance exam, whether it is CEED or NID, is easy, but relatively with part B, it is much easier. So let's compare NID and CEED part A, and we'll also look upon part B a little bit. So basically, NID CDAT has no structure. When I was researching about the exam, how to prepare and how to approach for it, I got very little material online. As compared to CEED actually provides a whole lot of PYQs, previous year question papers, on its own official website. NID would not do that. And since I did not apply in any institute, I prepared on my own. So everything that I was dependent on was the internet. So the thing is, I only got one question paper, which I'll be sharing in this description. And also the 2022 question paper will be in the description below. So what I found about NID was that there is no structure in the exam. They will ask n number of questions. You don't know how many questions will be asked and what is the weightage of the question. This year, they asked 37 questions in part A and 5 questions in part B in my discipline, which was animation design. Whereas CEED is very structured, you know how the question papers will be marked, what is the weightage of every question, whether it is part A or part B. You know the differentiation between the sections in the question paper of part A of CEED, but it is a very surprise thing that will happen in CDAT and NID. CDAT, we don't know the separation of how the questions will be distributed. So when it comes to NID takes a lot of care about general aptitude. The analysis and logical questions, mathematical questions, numerical answer type questions are not that complicated as compared to CEED. If you are preparing for CEED and you have already have a grasp on NATs and numericals and logical questions, patterns, then NID questions are very easy as compared to CEED. But when it comes to general aptitude, NID goes crazy. It can ask you anything. It can ask you things from science and technology, art and architecture, product design, types of molding. I mean, same things are also asked by CEED, but they really go into detail. For example, this year they asked which is the largest organ in the human body. Okay, so I got that wrong. It was the skin. I take liver. The only good thing about NID part A is that it has no negative marking. CEED has negative marking. I mean, that is the pro of NID. To prepare for the general aptitude, because if you only prepare for cracking the exam, the syllabus suddenly becomes vast. You don't know from where to start and where to end. So there are two ways. I mean, the first way is the general way is to just read everything, whatever you get. But at a point, it becomes boring, because how much you are going to read and how much you can sustain in your mind. Because if you don't care about something, for example, the Suez Canal, I did not know. Even if I would have read about the Suez Canal, I wouldn't have remembered it because how it is affecting me. I don't have any interest into it. And a lot of topics in general aptitude are like that. For NID CDAT, what I did was that whatever things that affected me in terms of current affairs, for example, when I was preparing for the exam, there were protests going on in our country, and those protests were happening against the farm laws. So I wanted to know that for what those protests are going on and why those people are on the street. What are the pros and cons of those three bills? What are those three bills? Now, I think that if NID cares about Greta Thunberg's protest, then why it will not care about our own countries? Okay, and since I'm politically very savvy, I take care of the changes in the policies and the politics of different areas. I'm an artist, so I'm also interested in paintings, artwork, sculptures, different artists, contemporary artists, artists in the history, the different art movements that happened. So the thing is, there is one way that you learn the data, which you might forget, and the other thing is you can just go behind the story. For example, if you learn about Van Gogh, the post-impressionist hero, right? You can just go out on Wikipedia and read his biography. And now you are reading a story. So when you are reading a story, the story resides with you. And that happens with every damn thing. For example, the architecture. If you think about the Dravid architecture, okay, you start reading about the Cholas. Now, what happened in that period? What are the kind of architectures that took form in that time? And what is the reason they came up with such beautiful and massive structures? There are different stories going through about these ancient things that are around us, and those stories will help you remember these ancient things. I mean, those stories, I don't know whether they are true or false, because who knows, right? I visited to Khajuraho and there are so many stories regarding those temples there. But who knows whether they are right or wrong. But I care about those stories because those stories will help me remember, okay, this is Shankar Kandaria Mahadev Mandir and this is Dulhadev Mandir. Okay, so the thing is, if you go behind the stories of the general aptitude data point questions, then you have a lot of potential to retain that data. Whether if you just learn about something, then I don't think so how much you are going to remember it. There is one more type of question that they asked, and I got it by surprise. I mean, I was not prepared for it. NID asked question on the basis of paragraphs. So they gave paragraphs, and we have to read those paragraphs and come up with the answers for the MCQs that were asked on the basis of that paragraph. But now the problem here in this question is, the questions were very easy. If you read the paragraph, you'll come up with the answer. But you have only 30 minutes to solve 37 questions, which means you don't even have 1 minute for one question properly, right? So that was the biggest issue. So I came up with a real-time solution in the exam. I did not read the paragraphs. I skipped the paragraphs. I just got the keywords in the question, MCQs, and I searched those keywords in the paragraph because the font and the composition of the paragraph is very legible. You can actually see every word because they have designed it like that. So I found those keywords, I got the answer, I ticked the answer, and moved on. So numericals are easy, GK, if you know, you know, and paragraph questions. This is how I solved it. There was a very peculiar question, a different question that NID won't ask usually, but that time in that question paper, this question was there. So this question was regarding the coin paradox principle. And when you also solve CEED PYQs, you will find out that similar questions but with different parameters, different magnitudes are asked. Nowadays, it has started caring about analytical and numerical questions, because if you see the 2022 question paper, you won't find any data point question. When I am saying data point, I am saying about identify this logo, or where is Bhakra Nangal Dam, so where is this particular UNESCO World Heritage Site in India. These are data point questions, which means if you know the answer, you know. I mean, if you know where is Periyar National Park, then you know where it is. If you know where is Jim Corbett, then you know it is, right? You won't waste your 20 minutes thinking about where it is. If you know the answer, you know the answer. But this time, CEED did not ask any such questions. All the questions were analytical. But it is not a rule that it will continue doing it. Maybe next year it can ask logos. Maybe next year it can ask similar questions. The type of questions that were asked in the previous year question papers. So I won't say that you don't prepare for it. Go for it. Prepare everything. Try to learn new things every day, and give time to every question if it is concept based. For example, the numerical answer type questions are often ignored by a lot of people in CEED because it takes a lot of time, is the complaint of so many aspirants. But my experience is very different. I'm an artist. I did not study science after 12th standard. But it is much more than enough. If you look at the CEED question paper this year, that's enough. If you know the angles and property, if you know different things that the previous year question paper already provides you as a topic, for example, the platonic solids, for example, different types of polyhedron or polygons, uh, or let's say the gears, the rotational mechanics. If you know the concept behind it, which I'm going to explain one concept, because see, this video is not about explaining you concepts. It's about telling you that if you know the concepts, nats are 10 to 20 seconds, not more than that. And 20 seconds, if you can solve one nat, it's a profit, because if you solve 4 nat questions, you get 12 marks. I mean, it's a treasure, right? So don't ignore it. So I'll explain you one concept behind the cycle question, because cycle question is the most terrifying question for so many people. If you see this particular video, these circular discs are connected to the center. So the number of rotations of these discs are going to be same. Doesn't matter the radius of the smaller one or the bigger one. So the number of rotations that all these 3 discs are going to make will be same. Okay. On the other hand, if you see this setup, here the bigger disc and the smaller axle above in the motor is connected with a belt. Now here the length of the belt is the constraint. So the length of the belt will remain same, but the number of rotations of the smaller disc as well as the bigger disc will be variating, will be changing, because the length needs to be same. Okay, so the smaller disc will rotate fast and the bigger disc will rotate slow, but the translational distance will be, of course, same. So the concept is, again, I'm telling you, if 2 circular bodies are connected through the center, they rotate together, number of rotations are same, and if they're connected with the belt, the translational distance is same. And this thing comes from the very basic measurement of circumference. I mean, the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r, right? Where 2 pi is the angle, total 360, and r is the radius, which means if the circle rotates once, it is going to travel 2 pi r distance, right? So since we discussed the concept, let's apply this in the question. The question is, how much distance will the bicycle shown below travel if the pedal makes 1.5 revolutions, right? So if the pedal rotates 1.5 times, it is going to cover 1.5 pi d distance. And this is the same distance that the axle will cover, which means 1.5 pi d is 10 here, so it is 15 pi. The axle will also cover the same distance. The diameter of the axle is 5 centimeters. So let's assume the number of rotations something, which is something times pi d, right? Because pi d is the distance covered in 1 revolution, so we don't know how many revolutions it has made, but it will be equal to the distance. The distance is 15 pi, which is equal to the number of rotations times pi d, which is 5 pi. So the number of rotations of the axle is 3 if you cancel out everything. So you instantly, without even using the pencil, you come to know that, okay, the number of rotation for this axle is 3. And since the axle is connected to the center of the bigger wheel, the number of rotation for the bigger wheel is also 3. So you know the number of rotations of the bigger wheel. Now you know the translational distance, the distance that the cycle will cover, because in 1 rotation it will cover the circumference, which is pi d. Here d is 35 centimeter and pi is whatever you take, 22 by 7 or 3.14. So here if you consider 22 by 7, because it will cancel out with 35. So number of rotation is 3 times 22 by 7 times 35, which is, I don't know, you calculate. But it is 330. I mean, it is 330. So this question is a 20-30 second question if you know the concept behind it, that if two discs, 2 gears are connected to the center, the number of rotations will be same, and if they're connected with a rod or a belt, the distance traveled by the whole system will be same. So doesn't matter how much this rotates or this rotates, the distance will be same. So you can find out the number of rotations by equating the distance, because what is the distance? Distance is nothing but the number of rotations times the circumference, right? So that's how simple this question is if you know the concept behind it. Seed will also ask you a kind of question where it will give you just a polyhedron, whether it is a platonic solid, whether it is a Buckminster Fuller model, a football model. In one of the question papers, it actually asked you the football model. So it will just ask you tell the number of vertices in this polyhedron, and which is very confusing if you don't know the concept behind it. The concept is very simple. There was a person called Euler. He's a very big mathematician of in the history, and he talks about a formula which is very easy to learn. I learned it by the name of fever, Fever, where I just ignored ER. So wherein I put a minus between F and E and a plus between E and V and equated it to 2. This is the Euler's formula. This is how I remembered this formula, and it's available on the internet. So now if you look at the Buckminster-Fuller model, the football model, and if you are from architecture background, you will know that it is made by hexagons and pentagons, regular hexagons and pentagons. And the thing is, it is very weird that when I thought about, okay, this football is made up of bigger shapes and smaller shapes, so the number of smaller shapes should be more than the bigger shape, which means the number of pentagons should be more than the number of hexagons. Now, unfortunately, those pentagons are small and those are small voids. So this model had 20 hexagons and 12 pentagons. So the pentagons are less in number as compared to the hexagons. And this was very interesting to me. So I remembered this. So what are the number of faces? 20 hexagons, 12 pentagons, which is 32 total faces. And in 10th standard, if you would have learned about Buckminster-Fullerene carbon model, this famous C60 carbon model, because carbon is a very friendly compound. It makes covalent bonds and it shares electrons. So it can make a chain of bonds, creating very complicated and stable molecules. So there was a very famous carbon 60 model, which was looking like the Buckminster-Fuller football model. So the number of vertices is always, we know, because I remember that carbon 16 model. So the number of dots represents the number of carbon atoms. So there are 60 carbon atoms, which means the number of dots are 60. From there, I got to know that, okay, there are 60 vertices in this. So I know the number of faces, I know the number of vertices. Now, if I am asked in the question that what are the number of edges, I can totally put this thing inside this formula, which is fever, F-E-V, F minus E plus V equals 2. What I get, I know the face, which is 32. I don't know the edges, so minus E plus I know what? I know the vertices, which is 60. And when I equate it to 2, what do I get? I mean, it becomes 90. So we get 90 edges. So the thing is, all these questions are so simple if you know the concept behind it. And to understand the concept will take you a little bit time. And it is okay to give time when you are not attempting the question paper. So if you don't know a question, just Google it, ask to your friends. If you are a part of a community, I totally think so, because I'm still. So find out people who are really smart in these questions and who can come up with really nice approaches. So if you know the approach properly, if you know the concept and the approach, these NAT questions are not more than 20 seconds or 30 seconds. And same thing I would say for the MCQs and MSQs. The difference is that NAT, you get free marks. You don't have any negative marking. MSQs, you have very little negative marking, where 0.2, even if you get all the answers wrong, you just lose 2 marks. So when I approached this CEED exam for part A, my idea was to start from MCQs, because I must tell you, see, CEED and NID, both the exams are only crackable if you know how to control your nerves, if you know how to control your stress. because literally in CEED exam there is a clock which is ticking in inverse direction. So the amount of stress and the amount of pressure that is created in that particular scenario is tremendous. So if you know how to control yourself, the exam is yours. But how to do that? Every bit of motivation is important in that particular scenario. So if you start from MCQs, the best part is that you get to solve 23 questions, which should be solved very consciously because there is a high toll in negative marking in that. You have a fresh mind and you are approaching MCQs first. You are very conscious about everything, because after a while, if you start from NAT and then MSQ, by the time you reach the MCQs, the neurons really get grind up. Approach towards MCQs is very simple. Only one answer is right. So elimination method works. Now after 30 minutes, let's say you solve 23 questions. So a kind of confidence, a sense of achievement comes in mind that you have solved half the paper in 30 minutes, and that is a big motivation in that time. And it is okay to not solve all the questions, because anyway you're not going to solve every question, but it is very important that you notice every question, that okay, this question was there. You don't skip any question. It's okay that if you can't solve it, leave it, don't waste your time, but it is very important that you look at the question, because who knows whether if you skip the question, you don't know that whether you knew the answer or not. So that way there is the motivation is built up after solving 23 questions in half an hour. Now you just have left 17 questions, so you need to go to MSQs. Same approach for the MSQs might take a little time, but again it is very important to look at all the questions. Who knows whether you know the answer or not. So, and after that, when you approach NAT, you are so free. I mean, the amount of time is really less for NATs, but you can actually go away with all the answers. You can write the answers blindly and come up. Even if you don't know the answer, it's all right to write the answers, because you don't lose any marks. But if you know the concept, I just demonstrated that you can solve the questions in 30 seconds and 10 seconds or 20 seconds. I mean, let's come up somewhere in between. 20 seconds are enough to solve the gear questions, right? Okay, whether it is the pulley question, whether it is the platonic solid questions. If you know the platonic solids, for the matter of fact, half of your problems are solved. And how to learn the platonic solids? Draw them. Draw with your own hands, and draw in different styles. Try to memorize them. They're not that tough. I mean, you will see these are the platonic solids. You can actually draw them from different angles and memorize them. So treat every NAT question like a concept. Learn the concept behind it. Okay, and I mean, wait for the magic in the exam. It might occur to you in the exam. So for part A of NID or part A of CEED, the biggest priority in the exam will be time. So whichever question you are approaching, make sure the first approach is right. And if the first approach is wrong, leave the question. That is not your question. Set that ego apart and don't mess up with your time, because if you are going for the second approach, especially in the NATs and the MSQs, because MCQs, you use elimination method. That is the only approach you have. But even if MCQs are not being solved in first approach, sorry, not second, leave it. It is not your question. Because if you try again, you are going to lose 3 minutes. And trust me, you don't have 1 minute for one question in the exam. The time runs in a tremendously different way in exam. If you are used to solving the questions in 45 seconds at whatever place you are preparing, then you will see that you will be able to solve the questions in 1 minute in exam. So it's okay to prepare for 1 minute while you are preparing. Give yourself a minute, give yourself the first approach, and if you are not able to solve in the first approach, leave the question in the exam. And if you are not able to solve it at home in first approach, try to come up with new concepts, try to come up with new approaches, because you can see that in CEED and in NID in part A, every question can be solved in different ways. There are so many ways. So come up with the approach that will suit you, that will save your time. Make sure that time is a priority in the exam, because again, I'm telling you, CEED and NID is a very rigorous process. It's not only about the written exam, it's also more than that. The process is very meticulous, because after the written exam, after even in the written exam, there is part A, you have to crack part A, then comes part B, and then so on. The tasks, the portfolio, the interview, and then you have to wait for the result. It's a 6-month rigorous process. So if you mess up with part A, there is a high chance that you'll get demotivated for part B, and that is the worst thing that can happen with you, because part B is the place that will give you your rank, that will give you the major chunk of your marks, because part A is just a gateway. It is just 25% weightage. It is not going to make that much difference as compared to part B, again I'm telling you. And the preparation for part B is very tough as compared to part A. It takes much longer time to prepare for part B as compared to part A. And I have seen a lot of people, even before, when I was I was preparing, a lot of questions of part A were discussed and part B were left. I mean, get critiques and get the talks started regarding part B. So again, we are discussing part A here. So that's it from my side regarding NID and CEED. We'll summarize. The summary is NID has no structure. You will be surprised in the exam. You don't know how many questions NID is going to ask in part A. And in part B, NID asks questions of different weightages. As far as my design discipline was considered, animation design, they asked 5 different questions, and the question paper is very lengthy as compared to CEED, because in NID we had to make, in animation design we had to make a whole comic book, comic strip, a comic page with different panels. The story was given, then we have to make a comic, and then we have to make a cover page of the same comic. Then one question was where we have to interpret an anthropomorphic creature, and then we have to write a story about it, and also we have to illustrate a scene from that story. Okay, and then there was a speech by Greta Thunberg, which I never heard, but I knew who she was, so I came up with an article and a poster that we had to create on the basis of that speech. Now this sounds so lengthy, and you have just 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours. So this makes the question paper so lengthy, and if you focus on just one question at a time and give 30 minutes to it or 40 minutes to it, you're not going to complete the question paper. And that is where the difference between the scorers and the mediocre rankers lies between. See, it's okay to fail in the exam by attempting the questions, but it's not okay to leave the question paper blank and come just because you were fascinated by one question and you wanted to give your best in that question. I mean, it makes no sense, right? It's better that you approach in a mediocre way with a mediocre idea to every question and not leave one single question unattempted. So make sure this is the strategy. Time is the priority in both the exams. And my review about both the exams is, because I have given this exam only once, since I prepared last year, I think that NID, since you don't have so much material, you don't have so much support from the website itself, while CEED has a proper structure, you know the number of questions, you know the marking scheme, the weightage of the marks, and you know how the rankings will be calculated. CEED makes more sense to me as compared to NID. Maybe I have my own biases because I never wanted to go to NID. I ended up where I wanted to be. But again, I mean, my bias is on the basis of logic. It's very difficult to prepare for an exam which can ask you anything. So all you can do is just focus on your own skills, improve your skills so that when the time comes, you execute through whatever ideas and execution skills you have. And one more thing, guys, no solution to any problem in these question papers are right or wrong. Solutions are very subjective, but make sure that logic is there, because that is a solution. A solution should be logical, it should be working, it should be legible, readable, comprehensible. And the best way to come up with solutions for part B of these two exams is to show your solutions to lay people. I mean, not lay people, the people who don't have to do anything with design, right? show your drawings to your friends with whom you're talking, I mean, with whom you exchange your notes, or if you are a part of a community, then share your sketches, your artworks there, so that you can get a logical critique. Because, and it is, and see, this exam is not only about drawing. I mean, drawing will help you if you're good at drawing. It helped me a lot because I got my question paper completed in time. I did not leave any question in any of the exams, and that worked for me, and it will work for you. And drawing helps you there, but it is not only about drawing. It is in fact only 25-30% about drawing. But apart from drawing, if you are not good at drawing, it's all right, but just take care of the line quality, which can be totally improved within a month. The basic exercises, you know, that you make straight lines, you make two dots on a bigger paper, you join it with one stroke, you create circles, a lot of circles of different line width, different shades. For example, one circle is very dark, another is very small, and so on. You create different shapes, you create triangles, you create squares, you create rectangles, and then you compose all these shapes. When you do this, make sure the consistency of your lines are same, and the lines are not broken, and make sure that the line quality is consistent in all the questions, all the answers that you provide, right? If that is the case, then it will show that this all the answers are created by the same person. And this is very important to do, because in an exam which is for 2.5 hours long, it's very tough to remain consistent. This is also applied to CEED, by the way. So I personally feel NID CDAT was tough, and it was also tough because it is the first exam that I gave. So this is my personal experience. It can be different for you, but fortunately I cracked both. I mean, that is the basic difference between NID CDAT and CEED. And tell me whether this video helped you or not. Because this is the only video which has no demonstration. And because it is part A, I mean, I am teaching you maths. I mean, nothing makes sense. Subscribe to this channel. Okay, we need a little bit reach, because I'm an artist. And AI is taking over. I just want your attention, nothing more than that. And I promise that I'm not going to waste your time. Kairneya is my Instagram handle, KAIRNEYA. Follow me there. As well as we have a Telegram group, which is Drawing Space. We just post our drawings there. We don't talk about part A questions at all. No numericals are discussed there, no MSQs, MCQs at all. We only talk about design solutions, okay, related to CEED and NID CDAT. And you can also share your own sketches, which is good. And we all critique each other. It's not me doing something, it's all of you. I really hope that the people who are attempting CEED have already filled the form for NID CDAT, because it's a very good preparatory mock exam, real exam, where you will go to a center and attempt the question paper as if you are doing it for CEED. And so, yeah, that's it. Thank you.